My name is William K. Murtaugh, Mark Witness 1, and my commentary today is going to be of a more general nature, not a specific subject, but basically just a discussion of a number of things that I have been talking about lately. Now, first part of what I'm going to talk about is how I became embroiled with Timothy Charles Holmseth, and eventually how I came embroiled with Field McConnell and the Children's Crusade. I've noticed quite a few comments recently on those who have believed in Field McConnell and still do believe in Field McConnell, and I sense that these people are trying to figure out why I went after Field the way I did, and remind me of the fact that I haven't been around that long, which is quite true. So I'm going to start out by explaining how I got on Tim Holmseth's radar. This was 10, 11 years ago. Now, before I had even heard of Timothy Charles Holmseth, I was a live streamer. Now, when I started up, the practice of mobile live streaming was practically non-existent. First of all, smartphones at that time weren't capable of doing this. The smartphones of the era did not have the sophistication, the power, and the nomenclature that would be needed to live stream over the internet. The bandwidth at that time was quite narrow and quite slow. You didn't start hearing the G code, G1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, until a few years after I initially started doing this. My webcasting back then was done through a laptop computer, a remote camera, and a wireless modem. And it was a little bit involved, so not a lot of people did it. Plus, it was relatively expensive. So when I did coverage of the Casey Anthony case and the disappearance of Caylee Anthony, I was at one point the only private live stream at the scene of the various searches, at the courthouse, and other locations throughout the Central Florida area where this occurred. Now, in February of 2009, the Casey Anthony case had pretty well been concluded. The child had been found in a garbage bag in a field less than a mile from where she had been living with her parents, the grandparents of the child. The court proceedings were underway to try Casey Anthony for the murder of her child. There was a lot of preliminary hearings and so on and so forth that were taking place. And it was around this time, in the middle of all this, that Haley Cummings disappeared. And as a rather odd coincidence, my business that I was running at the time is located in Palatka, Florida, which is about a 20-minute drive from where Haley Cummings used to live. And because of that, it drew my interest in the fact that this is yet another child that had disappeared due to while in the custody of a single parent or guardian. In this case, the young lady that was in the house is the girlfriend of the biological father of Haley Cummings. And because of this, this case, got nationwide attention. And the same circus that had been around for the Caylee Anthony case was now around for the Haley Cummings case. Now, the subscribers to my channel at the time had come up with $500 that we originally was going to go to a bench fund for Caylee Anthony. They wanted a bench at a park up in a nearby town to remember Caylee, kind of as a little remote memorial. Unfortunately, the town didn't go along with the idea, so a decision was made to take the money and instead donate it to the fund for use in trying to find out what happened to Haley Cummings. And I went up there and delivered the funds to the organization that had come in to search for the child. This was Texas EquiSearch. And I went over and I took pictures of the crime scene, which was the house, and also did a live stream from the area that had been set up as a headquarters for the search team. And at another time I went up to Palatka, I covered a press conference that the sheriff was giving in regards to the case. And then that was it. I dropped out because I was concentrating on the Caylee Anthony case. I had vowed that I was going to cover the case up until there was a verdict. And that's what I did. So, in my mind, the case regarding Haley Cummings was largely forgotten. I paid attention to the case, as many do, on social media to see how the progress was, and kept in contact with people I knew in Putnam County to get an idea of what was going on up there. And other people in the social media realm were participating in the debate on the case. Web Sleuth, a prominent forum, was a good place to go, and still is today, to discuss any true crime case that is of great interest to the general public. Other blogs had sprung up, and one in particular that would have significance over the next decade was called Radio News, and it was run by an individual who went by the moniker Radio. And in the beginning, Radio News was like any other blog or forum. It was a more or less serious website that would discuss various cases. But then something took place. Now, it wasn't quite clear if Radio News had been founded by one individual and sold or handed off to another individual, or the same individual owned Radio News from the start. But the fact of the matter is that about 9 months or so into discussions of the case of Haley Cummings, the format of the website was changed. And the announcement was made by the owner of radio news that she was taking a different approach to posting on the internet. She was going to delve into the area of satire. And then, satire is all around. The comedy shows are satire. And, so she said that she was going to go into satire. And that was the motto of her website. But it didn't take long for the truth of her intent to actually come out. She turned into a very mean and abusive poster on the internet. She was into doxing people before the term was well known. She would pick out individuals that she had problems with. She didn't like the way they were doing things on the internet, and she would expose them. She would post their personal information, where they worked, names of their family members, any quote-unquote dirty laundry they had, such as one person had a son who had been an alcoholic, and stuff like that. And she put this all over the internet for no other reason than to be mean. And I called her out on it. I said, you're ruining what you had. It's not a good way to do things. You're going down a bad path. You really shouldn't do that. And that was a big mistake. The radio is one of these people that doesn't like to be corrected. And so she started in on me. And the rest is history as far as radio is concerned. Now, one of the people I was defending at the time, which was rather interesting, was an individual by the name of Timothy Charles Holmseth. Now, I had not heard much about Holmseth at that time, other than when radio started berating the living daylights out of this guy. I mean, she was going full bore attacking this guy. And it got to the point where I couldn't understand it. I could not understand the intensity of why radio was going after this person. So I started looking into it, and I told radio, I says, I don't know what your problem is with this guy, but you need to back it off and stick to criticizing the guy without getting so damn personal. I mean, this guy has family, so on and so forth. Attack the guy, don't attack the family. I still do not like it when people bring in parties to a discussion that don't belong there. It's become commonplace, but I don't like it. But be that as it may, I started defending Tim Holmseth to the point where he had a right to discuss what he was discussing, as long as he was doing it in a way that would respect those he was criticizing. As time went on and the attacks against me got more intense, I started getting all kinds of accusations about me being put on the internet, about being a pedophile, about this, that, or the other thing. Material came out of nowhere that was completely fabricated. Law enforcement dismissed this information outright, and yet it kept getting published. And I was having a problem trying to get my reputation back on track. And it got to the point where I actually quit public live streaming because I just couldn't do it. I had to spend all my time trying to straighten out the mess that this radio person had created. And it was all due to my initial defense of Timothy Charles Holmseth. And this went on for a better part of a year, until one day I was contacted directly by radio. And this is highly unusual for radio to do that. She normally didn't do that. And she said somebody wanted to talk to me, and I said, okay, who wants to talk to me? And it turned out to be Kim Picasio. And I said, all right, I'll talk to her. Now, I only knew Kim Picasio as the subject of Tim Holmseth's wrath. He had basically zeroed in on Kim Picasio as the kingpin of this international pedophile ring. Although at the time, it was limited to officials in the state of Florida, officials in the state of Minnesota, and that was about it. There was no mention of anybody higher in the government, except eventually Hillary Clinton was named as a defendant. This is when the early days of Pizzagate. But at the time that I started getting entangled in the Holmseth mess, the Children's Crusade hadn't even been created yet. No one knew of its existence. They never heard of Field McConnell, so on and so forth. As time went on, and I started having exchanges with Kim Picasio, and I can guarantee you they were not pleasant ones, because I was angry at Kim Picasio for a number of reasons. And her and I had a lot of intense, bitter arguments. And I told her what I thought of her and what she was doing. I wasn't happy with some of the things that she was doing. And over time, the truth about radio came out. Because just like Field McConnell, there were people looking into radio, who radio was, and why radio was doing what she was doing. And it turned out that radio was playing games with everybody. She was basically on both sides of the fence. What we would call the pro-Holmseth group and the anti-Holmseth group, and the pro-Kim group and the anti-Kim group. She was playing all of us against each other. She would pretend to be pro-Kim with some of the sock accounts she made, and she would be anti-Kim on other sock accounts. And she did the same thing with Holmseth. She made at least a dozen accounts, mainly on Twitter, that supported Timothy Holmseth. And she made a similar number of these accounts that was against him. And she did this with most of the people that were deeply involved in the conflict. But then, as always, with these kind of people, radio made a mistake. She made a rookie mistake, and she got caught. And she was exposed, and she no longer is there. I took over the account, more or less. I created a radio news account, and it's on standby so that if the person who was radio news comes back again, I'll be ready. I had planned to do something with the account, but I determined it was a waste of time with the project I had in mind. So I just sat on the domain, and it's there in case I need it. So that's how I got involved with Timothy Holmseth. Now, Timothy Holmseth forgot all this, because Timothy Holmseth wouldn't leave me alone. Tim Holmseth got mad because Kim Picasio, me, and the group of people that had been involved in this little battle had a private chat one day, and we all decided that we agreed to disagree with each other, and we also agreed not to attack each other. That we had been played for fools by this one individual from Atlanta, and that we will go our separate ways, and we won't bother each other. If somebody tries a stunt like this again, we will discuss it, find out what's going on, and deal with it. But we will not go around attacking each other. And it's been the way ever since, and there hasn't been any problems. Not one individual in our little band of friends, as we are now, have turned on each other. So, and when Timothy Holmseth and a few others got wind of this, they got mad. And Timothy Holmseth attacked me, which is his way of showing gratitude for the fact that I was able to dispose of one of the worst enemies he could possibly have. Because Kim Picasio was nothing compared to radio news. Radio was vicious, radio was relentless, radio did a lot of damage to Holmseth. And nobody has been given credit for ending the radio news saga. It took a lot of hard work and determination and the joining of forces, both friendly and not friendly, to resolve the issue. And Timothy Holmseth never said so much as a thank you. In fact, Timothy Holmseth used what happened to his advantage and intensified his targeting of Kim Picasio. So those of you out there who wanted to know how Tim and I got feuding with each other, now you know. You can thank an individual by the name of Radio News, for bringing us together. Now, as to Phil McConnell, the explanation's rather simple. Because Phil McConnell is the new radio, so to speak. His pattern is exactly the same. He's not satire or smack or any of that radio described herself. He took advantage of people that have a sincere concern for children. Now, I don't fault the people that support Phil McConnell, most of them anyway, because they have decent and genuine motives. They felt that Phil was a compassionate Christian who cared about the plight of children that may have been caught up in some very bad situations. They're being kidnapped, they're sold, used for satanic rituals, that sort of thing. Now, and I'm not entirely sure if the most extreme of these accusations are occurring by the people that Phil McConnell has targeted, Hillary Clinton and every Democrat, and even now we're getting up as high as Vice President Pence. I believe there are other people involved in this. Epstein may be involved in it, but I doubt that the Clintons or people in that part of government are that involved in this kind of activity. I don't think they're involved. Now, if they are, I stand corrected, and whoever is doing these kind of things to children, if they're being done, need to be punished. But it needs to be done the right way. And I think the problem is that Phil McConnell is doing it the wrong way. Now, I respect those that still support Phil, and I understand why. But you have to understand why I don't have respect for Phil McConnell, and it's partly because of his methods, and it's partly because of attachment to people such as Timothy Charles Holmseth. Now, Timothy Holmseth is not connected in any way, shape, or form with President Trump. There is no Pentagon pedophile task force. He is not under protection by the United States Marines. He's not under protection by anyone other than maybe a housewife who, for whatever reason, decided she wanted to put him in her basement, and Phil McConnell wanting to put him in his basement. I think Phil McConnell exploited Holmseth. But Holmseth crossed a very big line when he went after people like me and Kim Bocasio. Now, the main reason that I supported Kim Bocasio in her campaign against Tim Holmseth is because I found out the truth. I gained access to every scrap of correspondence, all 1,600 pages of the court documents having directly to do with the case. I got access to all the court cases having to do with Timothy Charles Holmseth, and I noticed the pattern right off, that Timothy Holmseth goes after people that disagree with him, right or wrong. If you disagree with Timothy Holmseth, your ass is grass. And that's what happened here. Timothy Holmseth went after people wrongly that simply criticized him, disagreed with him, and wanted to be left alone. And Phil McConnell took advantage of that. Because like I've stated earlier in my previous videos, Phil McConnell had his own problems. And he was similar in many ways with Timothy Holmseth. Phil McConnell had a gripe with his sister. Phil McConnell had a gripe with the legal system over many things that had happened, including his current situation with his house and the Internal Revenue Service. But these problems were Phil's own creation. They weren't the fault of the U.S. government or the courts. The responsibility lays solely on the shoulders of Phil McConnell. Now, Phil McConnell joined up with Kurt Pendergrass, and Kurt Pendergrass is in the same situation. He had problems with the courts. They didn't go his way. And he had problems with women. And so did the partner in Florida of E-Clause. He got arrested because he didn't pay child support. He had problems with the court system. So naturally, he's going to piss and moan about it. Timothy Charles Holmseth once wrote that likes attract. And they certainly do, because Timothy Charles Holmseth and everybody that's part of the E-Clause and the Children's Crusade group have had some kind of a problem with the court system. And it's affected them in a negative way. And so they create all this campaigning to go after the court system. And on top of that, then they blame all these officials by naming them as suspects in this pedophile operation. And they get involved with Q and everything else. Now, I would suggest to people out there that rather than follow Phil McConnell and others like him, is to seek out those people that have a genuine goal of doing something about this stuff. There's people out there, you don't see them claiming to be part of the U.S. government and part of any task force or anything, that are sincere in what they do. They try and work with local law enforcement to whatever degree they can to try and alleviate this problem. And yet these people get called out as frauds. I've checked some of these people out. I don't agree with a lot of the politics that I hear out there. But the one thing I notice is you don't see patron or pay-to-pal banners on their websites. You don't hear them calling for money all the time. These people are trying to solve a problem as best they can. They're sincere, and that's what's important. Seek out those that are sincere about ending the problem of child abuse, sex trafficking, and if it exists, these satanic ritual abuses. Don't support the charlatans. Don't support anybody out there who is constantly bringing up Patron, PayPal, Visa, or MasterCard. We need the money to do this, that, or the other thing. The people that claim that they're Q and they're a part of the Pentagon Task Force and anything like that. There are people out there who discuss this situation, want to do something about it, and want to do it the proper way. They don't go around falsely accusing people of things. They don't go around falsely accusing people without evidence. They do their homework, they research, they report. Those are the people you want to listen to. I'm not one of them. I may give an opinion or two or discuss a case in my Everyday Pedophile series once I start up, where I discuss cases that are going on. But I'm going to let the court tell the story. I'm going to let the trial tell the story. If the person is acquitted, I'll report that they're acquitted. If the person is convicted, I'll report that they're convicted. But when I start up this series, I am going to follow from the day of the arrest through the day of the conclusion with the Everyday Pedophile. That's going to be my participation. I may discuss incidents that come up every once in a while, but I'm not going to say that Donald J. Trump is running a pedophile ring, even though I hate his guts. And I'm not going to say Hillary is either, because that's a false accusation. We don't know what's going on. If they are, they'll be found out through proper channels. I try to deal as best I can with the facts. And when something's an opinion, I state it's an opinion. I'm not an expert in anything. I am simply a retired truck driver, commercial vehicle owner on Social Security. I just turned 69 years old. I'm nobody special. I don't have an organization similar to the Children's Crusade or any of that. I'm simply me on my little computer, yakking away through a headphone, giving my side to the various stories that I discuss. It's up to you, the viewer and the listener, to decide for yourselves if I have anything of value to contribute. And to all those people who support Phil McConnell, I understand. I saw this with the two cases that I covered in Florida, Trenton Duckett and Kaylee Anthony. You have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and when a story like these two children hit the national news, it tugs at your heart. You get concerned. You get angry. You want something done. You want justice for these children. You want the children found, hopefully alive. And when they're not, you want justice. I fully understand that. And so does Phil McConnell, because he took advantage of it. Now, if you want to continue to support Phil McConnell, I will respect that. But I am also going to respectfully disagree. I've studied Phil McConnell in the brief time that I got involved in the situation. I've discussed Phil McConnell with those that have had more history with him. And I've also discussed my history with Timothy Charles Holmseth and why I got involved with the Phil McConnell situation. Because Phil McConnell did exactly the same thing. He attacked a woman with no evidence, made false accusations, and he took it to the point where he made threats. And he put the woman's security at risk, he put the woman's employees at risk, and he's put the woman's children at risk. Because there's always that possibility that some madman out there who supports the QAnon sovereign citizen movement may eke out his individual justice. The lone wolf, the rogue, and somebody who is either going to get hurt or killed because of the inflamed rhetoric. And this is what I'm concerned about, and this is why Phil McConnell sits in a county jail as we speak. So as we continue forward, and I continue to make my presentations, and we have our disagreements and agreements depending on where you stand on this issue, just bear in mind that I understand where everybody is coming from. I understand that all of us are concerned about the plight of these children. Now, our belief systems are different. We may believe different things about what is happening to these children, but what is important is that we are all concerned about it. So as we move forward, let's try and do things the right way. Let's try and get as much correct information together so that maybe we could put a stop to what is happening to these children, so that these children can go forward and fulfill their destiny and live out their lives without fear and without going through the kind of disgusting things we hear about on a daily basis on social media and, in some cases, on the mainstream media. So with that, this is William K. Murtaugh, Mert Witness 1. Have a good one.